Hi, I'm Bill Laveris. I'm the Content Director for the Mobile Enterprise 360 website. I'm very happy today to be joined by John Gallant, who's an old friend. He's also the Chief Content Officer at IDG Enterprise, which essentially means that all the great content from CIO, Computer World, Network World, Info World, et cetera, the responsibilities for that all roll up to John. So, John Gallant, thank you very much for being my guest here today.
Bill, glad to be with you.
Is it fair to say that security is a primary, if not top driver of desktop virtualization efforts these days from what you observe?
Yeah, what we're seeing is that this challenge of both managing and capitalizing on mobility is really driving this discussion around desktop virtualization, and security is a huge piece of that. So obviously you want to be able to give people the devices and the applications that they want on their mobile devices, but at the same time you really want to be able to secure and kind of lock down that corporate piece of the desktop. And I think as each device gets more personal along the way, going from your laptop all the way to your smartphone, that gets more and more challenging, and I think it creates a bigger opportunity for desktop virtualization. So if I consider, for example, my smartphone, it really is a dual-purpose machine. I'm using that for a lot of personal things, apps, photos, videos, fantasy football, all kinds of things like that. But by the same token, I'm using it for a lot of work-related things. So desktop virtualization gives you the opportunity to provide all of the tools that someone needs from a work perspective, but really keep those separate from sort of the personal life and make sure that the two things don't get intermingled. And that really is a key driver, and security is a key piece of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real conundrum because you have to, support the user experience the way that they want it to happen, while at the same time you have to secure all the data if you want to secure your job. What are the characteristics or the elements of desktop virtualization that seem to make the solution particularly adept at resolving some of the many challenges of mobility today? What with the pressing security challenges of BYOD and the consumerization movement?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One is there's a simplification issue for the end user. I mean, you really don't want them to have to go through a lot of hoops to sort of construct their work environment on that mobile device. Right. So you don't want them to have to be figuring out, how do I get access to this application and this information? Am I using the right versions of these things? And the other piece of that is, again, that containerization of things, which is my personal life isn't bleeding over into my work life. If I need to make changes to that desktop environment, as an IT person, I can make them for a lot of different people in these virtual workspaces, and I can ensure that everybody is seeing those changes at the same time. Also, if there's a problem, I can close off access to that, and it makes it a lot easier than what you see with a number of these mobile apps managers or these mobile device managers, which can be pretty blunt instruments for managing a mobile environment. It's basically, oh, problem, I'm going to wipe that thing and be done with it. This allows you to only touch the pieces that are corporate related, and allows you to really, again, containerize that environment that the person is working with, ensure they have a great experience, ensure that they have access to all of the things they need, and ensure that they have that access in a consistent way across a number of environments tailored to whatever your role is within the company.
Mm-hmm. So it's a consistent experience for the user, regardless of the device, regardless of where they happen to be located and so forth.
Right, and that also creates some consistency across devices, because as you see now, if you're at any conference or you're with someone, they may have a tablet, a laptop, and a mobile phone. Every one of these can't be a different experience, right? With that desktop virtualization experience, you can provide that consistent desktop across all of those devices, regardless of what else the person is doing with everything from the smartphone to the tablet. Now, it's not a panacea. There are issues that you have to deal with, which is that, for example, in a touchscreen environment, some applications that are, say, Windows-based or older applications may not really perform all that well, and they may be a little more challenging to deliver, but at least you can create a consistent experience across that world that the end user works in.
Right. It's a very dynamic environment too, obviously. The mobile providers are out there between whether they're doing platforms or endpoint devices or whatever. They're constantly making changes to these, so it's got to be a bear to keep up with. Let's throw in one final element here with the last question, John, if I can. Can you knot together the relationship then between, say, desktop virtualization, mobile security, and then let's add in cloud computing. Is there a relationship among those three?
Yeah, I think there's a very strong relationship among those three. I mean, one of the things that's most challenging, particularly if you're a smaller or mid-sized business, is this idea of managing mobility is just another big chore on top of a lot of big chores that you already have to deal with. So essentially you've been, because you want people to have that freedom, you want people to capitalize on these great mobile devices and tablets, all of a sudden you've got a big new headache that you have to manage. So I think people are looking at new solutions. Desktop virtualization is a great solution for securing and creating that consistency. You also have to think of a couple of other things. One is, how do you tie in cloud applications, right? Because that's part of the application set that people are working with today, whether it's Salesforce or Workday or any of the other applications that are very common out there. The second piece, and one thing that I'm really excited about, is this idea of desktop as a service, which is virtualization provided by a service provider. So here you're really taking that chore of managing all those environments and creating and handling all those upgrades and dealing with all of the different devices and operating systems and specific security woes of all those things. And you create this virtualization, virtualized desktop as a service. I think that's a great option for a lot of companies because it lets you capitalize on mobility but get out of the business of managing all of that and becoming an expert in mobility and managing mobility, which is, it's not a lot of fun.
Excellent. Good point. So desktop as a service looming potentially big to help IT managers sort of manage this whole mess in the first place.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that come up on the IT manager's radar very, very quickly because I think particularly if you're running a medium-sized or smaller shop, this is a great way to manage what will continue to be a problem because always new devices, new versions of operating systems, new sets of apps out there, new things that people are going to want. And this is a great way to sort of hand that problem off to someone else to deal with for you.
Outstanding. Well, John Gallant, Chief Content Officer at IDG Enterprise, thanks very much for joining us today. Great information.
Bill, thanks. It was a pleasure.
And I'm Bill Lavaris from IDG from the Mobile Enterprise 360 sites, and thank you very much for joining us today as well.